Hello everyone, I am 8mm Mauser Man. If you've been subscribed to this channel for any length of time, you know that I primarily review old military surplus ammunition. Well, it is 8mm Mauser Man after all, and so a lot of that ammo is 8mm Mauser, but I also review 7.62x51, 7.62x54R. Well, that's coming soon. I have a whole bunch of ammo stocked up, but I need to get some backlog of 8mm in first. Anyway, all that is to say, this video is kind of atypical for me. I've been wanting to do 5.56 reviews for a while, as I've come across some interesting military surplus 5.56, and I had an intro lined up, which was going to be Winchester White Box, M855, M193, and 223, kind of as a baseline comparison to compare all of our other later military surplus and just interesting 5.56s to. However, when the True Velocity ammo hit the market recently and was in our local Cabela's, I knew I had to get a video out on it right away so that I could hopefully, maybe, possibly beat the pack. This ammo is really interesting, so I'm doing this video before the intro video, which is kind of funny, so expect the intro video sometime after Halloween because I also have a Halloween video lined up already. So, all of that being said, the intro for this video might not be all the way fully fleshed out yet, like the cool chapter cards and title cards and all that. Well, True Velocity ammo is a newer thing. It takes advantage of polymer cases with a steel piece at the back that the extractor can grab onto, and also that contains some of the pressure there. I wanted to show you a fired case cut in half, but you can see it pretty well on the back of the box first. So you can see here it is a boxer primer, which is about what we'd expect. Then there is a steel insert, and you can see that the steel insert, well, it has the back for the extractor rim, it also wraps around inside of the case. This is a little bit different than the German training ammo we looked at in the past. Then the case goes all the way up and obviously goes around the bullet. There you go. And this is obvious, it's a polymer case. We'll talk about the weight reduction a little bit later on. It mentioned dimensional consistency, that because it is polymer, they can make each case the exact same versus like a stamped piece of brass, which is what's more typical. They said that the powder is measured very precisely, and because of that has single-digit standard deviations for the velocity. When we talk about the velocity, we'll talk about that. They mentioned exceptionally tight groupings because of the things previously mentioned. Reduced heat transfer, due to the case being polymer rather than steel or brass, rather than being metallic. Because of that reduced heat transfer, they mentioned that there is going to be less heat transfer to the gun, causing lower wear and tear. Then also more consistent powder burn because of the precision case shape, and then a high-performance projectile for improved terminal performance. I'm not putting all of these things to the test today. The main things that we're going to be testing today are accuracy, velocity, and weight reduction as it relates to cost. The other things we'll need to see other videos on down the road. Maybe I'll do one on the terminal performance, and this ammo is expensive, so this box was $25. I don't have enough money to buy 100 rounds to test. I just had the one box of 20, so we're a little bit limited on that front. Okay, so all of that being said, let's go into the velocities next. I'll show you that video here. Today we're testing True Velocity 55 grain 5.56. We are comparing it mainly to M193 55 grain ammunition, and right now we're going to do the chronograph testing. We're going to do 5 rounds out of my M16 with a 20-inch barrel, and then 5 rounds out of a rifle with a 16-inch barrel. But the 20-inch barrel first. $3,141. $3,175. $3,146. $3,132. $3,144. All right, let's shoot the M193. 3,258 feet per second. 3,255 feet per second. 3,231 feet per second. 3,263 feet per second. 3,248 feet per second. Okay, now we're going to test the same ammo in a 16-inch barrel, starting with the True Velocity. $2,997. There's a little bit of a glare on the chronograph, and I just had to double check. $2,998. $1,171. That is most likely a chronograph error. Looks fine. Okay, let's keep on going. $3,019. $3,013. Okay, next we have the M193 with the 16-inch barrel. $3,041. $3,138. $3,061. $3,024. $3,143. So that was our time on the range. Normally in ammo review videos, I put all of the numbers up behind me. However, I feared that in this video with so much data, that would just kind of start to clutter things, and it'd be hard for me to put together. So instead, I'm including a Google spreadsheet in the description, so you can click that link, and then you can see all of these numbers at the same time, and you can just look at them at your pleasure. All right, with the M193, we'll do the 16-inch barrels first. We had a velocity low of 3,024 feet per second, and a velocity high of 3,143 feet per second. That gave us a spread of 119 feet per second from lowest to the highest, and that's not great. But an average of 3,081.4 feet per second. With the True Velocity ammunition, we had a velocity low of 2,997 feet per second, and a high of 3,019 feet per second. I did have one chronograph error, so that's why there are only 4 recordings there, and that gave us a spread of 22 feet per second, which is very good. And an average of 3,006.75 feet per second. Then moving on to the 20-inch barrels, with the M193, we had a velocity low of 3,231 feet per second and a high of 3,263 feet per second, a spread of 32, very good, and also M193 out of a 20-inch is just smoking. I love to see it. That also gave us an average of 3,251 feet per second. Then with the True Velocity, we had a velocity low of 3,132 feet per second and a velocity high of 3,175 feet per second. 43 foot per second spread from lowest to highest. Again, pretty good, not bad. And an average of 3,147.6 feet per second. Okay, looking at all those numbers, we see a few things. One, with the 20-inch barrels, the M193 actually had a tighter range than the True Velocity ammunition. And this ammo, the True Velocity ammo, claims to have a standard deviation in the single digits. Now, these 2 rifles I have right here, they are not precision or match rifles, so maybe if you had a precision rifle, you would get closer to these results. And I also only shot 5 shots of each one, and one of those I had a chronograph malfunction giving me only 4 numbers to look at. But our standard deviations with the True Velocity ammo were, with a 16-inch barrel, 9.5. Just barely, but it is in the single digits, so that did hit the claim. But with a 20-inch barrel, we got 14.5 feet per second, which is still pretty good, but is just not in that single-digit range that they advertised. I have to say that one is a little bit off. Another thing that's a little bit off is that the velocities are considerably lower. With the True Velocity ammo in the 16-inch barrel, it was 75 feet per second lower, and with the 20-inch barrel, it was over 100 feet per second lower. And that is a big deal. 5.56 is a velocity-based round. So what that means is that your terminal performance will be heavily associated with the velocity. That's why longer barrels with 5.56 are better for impact on the target. So, looking at these numbers, that lower velocity is not great. Now, the box does claim that they have better bullet design and that will cause better terminal performance. I think that that's just marketing. Like I said, I'm not testing that in today's video. Maybe we'll do that down the road, and we'll shoot it at a ballistic gel block, shoot it at some water, maybe shoot it at some harder surfaces to see how it penetrates compared to M193. I think, though, that that is basically just marketing information. I think that this would probably have worse terminal performance than M193. But I'm not testing that, so that's as much as I'll mention it for this video. Just know it does have lower velocities. That does mean your BDCs might be a little bit off if you're using standard M193, and it means that you might have worse terminal performance than M193. All right, next let's talk about accuracy testing. I did the accuracy testing with my Rock River Arms, which has a 1 in 9 twist barrel, a heavy profile barrel, and a 2.5x prism scope. I'll show you guys the video right now. I have 9 rounds of the True Velocity loaded up, so we're gonna shoot it at about 100 yards and see how this ammunition performs. All right, that was a 9-shot group. Give me a second to load up my M193, and we'll be right back. All right, that was 9 shots. Let's go look at the target. We're on topic. So this is the True Velocity right here, and we have these 2 rounds that are all within about an inch or inch and a half, and then these 2 flyers right here that are probably about 3 inches apart. I'll get exact measurements on these when I get home, and I'll include those in the notes below while I'm talking. This is the M193. We have probably about the same size group if you include the 2 flyers, but all of the rounds are a little bit more spaced out here. So again, we have probably what looks like about 3 inches, and then with 2 inches if you include this flyer, or if you exclude this flyer out here. Now with the M193, out of 9 shots, my group was 2.83 inches. Just counting the best 8 out of 9, I have 2.42 inches, and counting 7 out of 9, we have 1.9 inches. So we got down to just under 2 inches if you just count the smallest 7 hits, and with the True Velocity, it looks like I had 2 flyers. I don't necessarily know that that was me, but it very well could have been. So if we were to throw those out, we'll see that number shrink as well. With all 9 shots, we have 3.17 inches. With the top 8, we have 1.87 inches, so it shrinks all the way down smaller than our 7 out of 9 with the M193. And then finally, with 7 out of 9, if we throw out both of those flyers, we have 1.27 inches, which is actually pretty good out of a rifle like this that's really not meant to be a precision rifle. Now, like I said, I don't necessarily know that those were flyers, but I wanted to give you all of that information just in case. Alright, finally let's talk about the weight. For simplicity's sake, I'm just going to give the ounces here. However, in the spreadsheet and in the description, I include both ounces and grams, and then grains for the weight of the 2 cartridges complete, so that you can look at those numbers as you like. Okay, so that being said, when we look at the Winchester, we get 0.41 ounces for 1 round, and then with the True Velocity, we get 0.294 ounces. So that gives us a savings of 0.116 ounces, and that's, I think, a pretty big deal. However, another thing that you need to factor in is that you just aren't carrying loose ammunition, you're carrying loaded magazines. Okay, how much do you save when you don't just consider the weight of the single round, but when you consider the weight of a full magazine? So I did this with 20-round aluminum magazines, 30-round aluminum magazines, and 30-round P-mags. Fun fact, aluminum magazines are lighter than polymer magazines. So if you want to save a little bit of weight, in addition to looking at this ammunition, you could also look at getting aluminum magazines instead of P-mags. Alright, now let's talk about what these things weighed. 20 rounds first, with the M193 we had right at 11 ounces, and with the True Velocity we had 8.7 ounces. With the 30 rounds, it was 16.4, or just over a pound, with the M193, and 12.92 with the True Velocity. And then finally, with the 30-round P-mag, with the M193, 17.2 ounces, with the True Velocity, 13.72 ounces. So you are saving a little over 2 ounces with the 20-round magazine, and about 3.5 ounces with the 30-round magazines. What does that equal out to, though, if you have a full combat load? If you are using 20-round magazines and you're carrying 7 of them, you save about a pound. If you're carrying 30-round magazines, if you're carrying 7 of them, you are saving about $1.50 pounds. With the 20-round magazines, you are spending 91 additional dollars. And the way that I'm figuring this number is that a box of this Winchester 55 grain M193 is about $12. This True Velocity box is about $25, so you have about $13 additional dollars, and that means that you're spending about $91 additional dollars, not including tax, in total, to save about 1 pound of weight off of your kit. With the 30-round magazines, you are spending approximately $136, again, not including tax, to save about $1.50 pounds. Now, that sounds like a lot of money for not that much weight savings. I was talking to a friend about this, and we had a bit of a conversation. During the Battle of Mogadishu, the Black Hawk Down incident, one of the major problems was that people ran out of ammo. They didn't take enough ammo with them. Also, during the Vietnam War, during bright light missions, if you ever see pictures of what those guys looked like going out on those bright light missions, they stuffed ammo wherever they could. They had multiple magazine pouches on their belt. They might have been wearing captured chest rig in order to get extra magazines in. They were overloaded with ammo. They were carrying more than 7 mags, and in addition to that, what does this look like in additional gear that you could carry? Well, in both instances, if you're carrying aluminum magazines, either 20 or 30 rounds, if you were carrying the True Velocity ammo, you could carry 2 extra magazines. So if you're carrying 30-round magazines, that means instead of carrying 7 for the same amount of weight, you can carry 9 magazines, which is 60 more rounds, and, well, that's a pretty big deal. So, now we need to ask the question, is it worth it? And frankly, I can't make that decision for you. That is a decision that you have to make. What I can say is, for me, it's not. Being somebody who is, as they say, balling on a budget, the idea of spending $136 more to save $1.50 pounds of weight, I can do that in a lot of cheaper ways. There's a lot of other gear I could buy that is a little bit lighter than other gear, and I could save on weight, whether that's a slightly cheaper rifle light, whether it's replacing the chonky barrel that's inside of this rifle. There are a number of areas to save weight that are not quite as expensive as buying this ammunition. Another thing to consider is that if I was to do something like buy a lighter barrel for this rifle, that light barrel would work for 10,000 rounds. But this ammunition, that is a recurring expense, versus something like changing out a different component for a lighter component that could save you on that weight and could be the exact same price, but is something that you buy one time. when new technology comes out, it is always really expensive. So right now, this ammunition is $25 a box. It's more than $1 a round. Is that worth stockpiling? Probably not. Is it worth buying because it's interesting? Sure. But give it 5-10 years and this ammo might be readily available. In fact, ammos like this that use polymer cases might at some point be even cheaper than brass, because plastic is a far easier resource to get your hands on than brass, but we might just not be there yet. So is this ammo worth it now? Probably not. Is it worth it in 10 years? Only time will tell. All of that being said, I am 8mm Mauser Man, and I fired true velocity ammo and started my 5.56 series out of order in order to get an interesting video to you guys faster, but I lived on.
Which proves it's hard to get the best of a man named John.
Big John.